Welcome, guys, to Hard Dose. It's been a while. I'm Brian McBalls, joined by Jordan Wade once again.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And it's Game of Thrones season, so here we are. We couldn't pass up Game of Thrones, so we're here to talk the GOT. So, yeah, season 5, episode 1. And we start off. Let's just dive right in. Spoilers for season 5, episode 1. If you have not seen the episode, you definitely do not want to watch this podcast video thing that we do here. So my webcam keeps moving up. But all right, so we start off with a young Cersei. It's a flashback from her childhood. And her and a childhood friend are going to visit the Woods Witch who lives in the Westerlands under the Lannisters' land. And yeah, Jordan, you have any questions or you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I thought it was an excellent introduction to the new season because at first I thought it was Cersei's daughter who's off in Dorne, so I was a little confused, and then I started clicking. I'm like, okay, I saw the hairstyle and stuff like that, and then I. Now, the girl she's with, that's not supposed to be like Oberyn's sister or anything like that, right? I mean, because she's sort of dressed in it looks like Dornish colors, but maybe it's just some random friend.
If they're going in line with the books, it's just like her handmaid or like one of her highborn friends. That's not like a major house. It's just like
Okay.
one of the smaller lords' daughters in Lannisport or Casterly Rock. A little difference here in the books. It's Cersei and two friends, not just one.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's going to play out different. But anyways, just recap. They go to see the Woods Witch. Her name is Maggie the Frog in the books.
Which we didn't get that name in the show, but I assume it's not a huge deal, at least for
No,
show
it's not a huge like reveal or anything, but that's what they called her, Maggie the Frog. But obviously HBO has sexed her up because she doesn't look like an old warty woman. She's actually attractive for a witch.
I was shocked. Yeah, I was expecting some sort of like just this awful human being, but she's an attractive female. She had some dark makeup on, a little dirty, but she cleaned up nicely.
Yeah, she could clean up, wipe off some of that bog mud, but yeah, that she grants him fortune telling, or she tells Cersei at least, and she gave them 3 questions, and do I remember this properly? That they only said 2?
Well, there was 2, but there was a follow up.
Because she asked, "Who will I marry?" Or no, "Will I marry the prince?"
And she said, "No, you'll marry a king." And then she asked, "Will I be queen?" I think, and that was like her follow up question.
Okay, and then she's like, "Yeah, you'll be queen for a time." Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe she did ask all 3 questions.
Yeah.
Then. Okay, and then the last one was, "How many will I have children with the king?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, he'll have 20, you'll have 3, and
And
with
she said,
golden crowns." Yeah.
yeah.
So I think it's funny they put a numeric value on Robert's bastards.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, Robert was a busy individual, man. But they had sort of alluded to that in the earlier seasons. But yeah, he has a lot of kids.
Oh yeah, but yeah, no, that's an interesting scene. I don't know if that. I have a feeling they will reveal more of that later. Like they'll come back to that flashback. And another thing to note: this is the first time Game of Thrones has done a flashback.
Oh yeah,
In
yeah,
case you haven't noticed, so this is the first time they've cast a younger version of a character just to show a flashback, which excites me because that's something I feel the show has missed out on. Is that the book is so rich with history and like visions and dreams and memories that you miss out on that aspect of it because in the books, the past is almost like to me, to some people, it's more important than a lot of the present stuff going on. There's a lot of interesting characters who are dead, who are, brought up a lot in the books, and through the inner dialogues of the character, and you get to get vivid accounts of their memories, which is something we miss out on in the show. And I'm glad they brought that Maggie the Frog flashback up. So I'm hoping they do that more often with a couple other characters.
Now, was this flashback around the same time period? I mean, isn't it in the same?
Yep.
Like, is it in book 4 or something like that? Is it like the same area that? Okay.
So a little bit of background information. In the first 3 books, there is no POV chapter for Cersei.
Okay.
She is a character that only other POV characters interact with. So you never got into Cersei's thoughts in the first 3 books. In book 4, she is introduced as a POV character. So you finally get to get in her head and understand what makes her tick as a character. And it's really interesting, actually, because you get a whole nother view of Cersei. And I'm wondering if they're going to go that route with the show. Because I mean, one thing we've actually had the advantage of is in the show we've had Cersei's POV from the beginning, and it's obviously changed a little, but we'll see how they evolve it. I'm kind of curious to see where they go with it. So yeah, I mean, anything else you want to say about Maggie the Frog?
No, I think
Flashback?
that's no, but we go from that. We go into what is Tywin's wake, basically, which was interesting. I'm assuming it could. I mean, well, unless we have some interesting flashbacks, this could be the last time we see Charles dance on Game of Thrones, and unfortunately, it's just him with the creepy rock eyes. But that very well may have been his last appearance on the show.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm hoping they bring him back for flashbacks. That would be awesome. So his wake is pretty standard stuff. Jaime's standing vigil. I could talk about a few differences here. Yeah, Cersei blames Jaime for a lot of what happened. And I'll just talk about this now. Something that's missing that's in the books that is not in the show is there's a lot of panic after Tywin dies, and they've kind of like bypassed that in the books. They just kind of skip to his funeral. And that panic has to deal with, they find him dead. Obviously, it's a big shock, and Tyrion's missing. So they put 2 and 2 together, pretty much, and they're like, oh, Tyrion killed Tywin. So they end up, there's a lot of investigation of the Red Keep. There's a hidden tunnel system that Varys has been using since the beginning of the show. And he has very detailed knowledge of this tunnel system, whereas no one else seems to have that knowledge. So there's a lot about Jaime and the Kingsguard that go down into the tunnels to go hunt for Tyrion and Varys, because Varys is missing. And yeah, there's a lot going on with that. His funeral scene, there's a lot missing from that too. There's basically a subplot where Tywin really stinks, like his corpse stinks, and there was a really cool fan theory about this where Tywin had a dinner with the Red Viper before the what do they call it?
The trial by combat.
The trial by combat. So the Red Viper has dinner with Tywin. He hates Tywin, and they have dinner together. And there's a fan theory that the Red Viper poisoned Tywin at that dinner, because Tywin goes to Pycelle for bowel relief, like what's it called? Diuretics or whatever.
Yeah, something, yeah.
For constipation issues. And anyways, the stench from his corpse and there's all these different little like hints that the Red Viper poisoned him at dinner. And even when we find Tywin, remember, he's on the toilet. And that's where Tyrion kills him, and so there's a lot of little points and details. It's like he was poisoned by the Red Viper, and he probably would have died from the Red Viper's poison, but it's just Tyrion came in and killed him before he died from poison. So it's a cool little subplot that it's a fan theory. I think it's been proven to not be true, but all the little details are there for it. It's pretty cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and yeah. Oh, we can go on to the next thing. I just want to bring that up real quick. Well, I guess next we have Tyrion and Varys arriving in Pentos.
Yeah, this was obviously Tyrion's a big fan favorite, so it was fun to see him pretty early on in this season, which makes sense. But we see him as a broken man, sort of. He's obviously he knows that his former life is behind him now. He's in a distant land. He feels he's pretty useless at this point, just being that he doesn't really have his family name anymore. So with that, he feels powerless. He feels without any sort of stability or anything like that. So he goes back to what Tyrion always does when he's depressed, and that just drink his problems away. So we get an interesting little exchange between him and Varys here. Basically, it sort of concludes with Tyrion throwing up a bunch of wine and then just beginning to drink again. We actually touch on them. We actually get more with them later on. This is sort of just, I guess, sort of the introduction of them in this new season.
We could just talk about all their scenes if you want.
Sure, let's go right into the second part because, I mean, it pretty much follows that. And this is probably one of the biggest, for the first episode, this is probably the biggest setup for things to come out of this whole first episode. And that is that Varys invites Tyrion to go on a journey with him to Essos to be on Dany's side. And it's interesting how Varys tells Tyrion that Tyrion has, and we know this, Tyrion has a lot of great assets. He's a very intelligent person. He's got a silver tongue. He's politically experienced, and though it sounds weird, he could be invaluable to Dany, just being that he knows Westeros.
His knowledge of Westeros is very meticulous. He knows so many details, all the different lords and ladies in the courts, and just that he was Hand of the King, he was so entrenched in the Lannister occupation of the throne. He knows what's going on at King's Landing, and obviously that's what Daenerys lacks, is she doesn't know jack about the Seven Kingdoms. She's still, if you ever see whenever they talk to Daenerys about the Seven Kingdoms, she basically just holds on to these stories that her brother told her when she was a kid. That Ned Stark is just some ravenous dog of Robert Baratheon. Her information is very outdated. It's very tinted and biased from Viserys, or what was his name?
Viserys, yeah, Viserys, yeah, something like that. Her brother.
I can't remember his name. I think it's Viserys.
Yes.
And it's just all her data is really not on point, and all she has is Barristan, and she did have Jorah to tell her stuff, but it seems like whenever they would get close to telling her the truth about things, she would kind of want to push it away. Like whenever they'd say, "Yeah, your father was kind of mad," because Viserys would always say, "Hey, they always lied about our father being mad, and he was mad. He was crazy. He was a bloodthirsty bastard. He just wanted to kill everybody and burn everybody." So it'll be interesting. I mean, Tyrion going to Daenerys is a huge deal. I think that's one of the biggest things that has happened in the last few seasons.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, so far this is obviously this is the biggest puzzle piece that we've received for how the show is going to end. With Tyrion joining up with the we don't know for sure yet, obviously, but if Tyrion does join up with Dany, that's a huge power couple, so to speak, and they become the major power player for the ending.
Mm-hmm. And I guess this is a good time to segue into Daenerys, because we were just talking about her, and I mean, Tyrion heading that way. So Daenerys, I guess we get introduced to the Essos plot with one of the
Unsullied.
The Unsullied being killed in a brothel.
And I just want to say, and I found out because you were talking before we started recording, both you and I were freaked out that they've recast Grey Worm. Not so much that it seemed weird to me. I'm like, why is Grey Worm look so different? But we do find out that it's just some random unnamed. Well, we do find out it's White Rat later on, but he's unimportant beyond with the act that's done to him.
Yeah, we have this fear instilled in us now that they're going to recast some of our characters. I think it's warranted. They've changed the cast so many times. But yeah, no, he gets killed in the brothel by one of the Sons of the Harpies. And so you had a question about the Sons of Harpies, didn't you? You wanted to...
Yeah, have we been introduced? We haven't been introduced to this group before, have we? I mean, I don't recall the Mask or anything being in the series. I mean, this is a new group, right?
Yeah, and I don't think they wear masks in the books, to be honest.
Okay.
So to give a little background information, there is a group of supporters of Daenerys actually in the books called the Brazen Beasts, and they are a group of characters who wear masks, and they're like masks with they're painted with like animal faces, but they're in support of Daenerys, and I think they have been removed from the series, the show. And they've given that mask aspect to the Sons of the Harpy. And the Sons of the Harpy, to give you a brief little description of them. They're just there. They want to basically restore power to the old masters. They want slavery and the Meereenese leadership reinstalled, pretty much, and they do it through terrorist acts, pretty much. So I mean that's really the meat of it, I guess, and
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be more revealed over the next few episodes.
Yeah, just being that, I would imagine so. Being that Dany says that they are going to have a big public funeral service for White Rat, and obviously there's worry that it'll invite the Sons of the Harpy out again. But basically, Dany says, "Well, this is how that's how we're going to get them, because I mean that is the most obvious way that they're going to come out and enact another crime." So I'm sure we'll come across them again. And then we go into the next part we get with her. There's this guy who returns, and I know forgive me, but I forget, he's a recognizable face, but he comes back from, what's the other city that he comes from? Do you recall? It's one of the other cities that she conquered.
I'm trying to remember.
Some of these names get jumbled around in my head.
And the Essos stuff is a lot of the hardest stuff to remember because their names are so strange.
Yeah.
Actually, I could pull it up real quick.
But
yeah, go ahead.
Regardless, he was an ambassador, and I can't remember. He seemed to be a character who was with his dad earlier on in one of the other seasons. I thought he came up with his dad who was ill or something like that. If I recall, but I can't remember the character's name. But yeah, he basically returns from the other city she had conquered, and he brings up that the people will, they'll create a council that will, report to Dany and stuff like that, but they want the fighting pits to be returned as a pastime. And Dany, being the compassionate individual who doesn't believe there should be violence or anything like that, unwarranted violence, she's completely against this whole fighting pit, or she says human cockfighting. But this seems to be a pretty big deal for the group, for the people around, because not only does she get asked multiple times by this ambassador, but Dario actually talks to her about it later on that evening while they're in bed. And we actually get some more interesting information about Dario's background, being that he was sold into the fighting pits when he was a child.
Mm-hmm. The guy's name was Hizdar Zolorak. And
okay.
like I said, the Essos names are so hard to remember. It's just a lot to that. But yeah, Dario being raised in the fighting pits. I don't recall if that's his background in the books, to be honest.
Okay.
But they are trying to make the fighting pits a relevant plot point, and it should be. It's a pretty contended point amongst that civilization, because they obviously can't. Slavery is definitely a no for Daenerys. She won't wiggle on that. She's not going to come to a compromise on slavery. But the fighting pits is something that is really, I guess, a tradition to the Meereenese. And they want to bring it back. They all want to bring it back, and even like the rich and the poor alike, because the poor, like Dario says, it was an opportunity for him, like where he could have just been a slave, just working away the rest of his life. In the fighting pits, he had a chance to make a name for himself and eventually gain his freedom. So, to a lot of the poor, the fighting pits are, they see it as an opportunity. So,
and while the rich see it as a source of entertainment, so
exactly, and also a point of a profit, because they can enter people in, or leader, that they'll find a way to make money off of it.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess that's all we really saw from Daenerys. Didn't they mention the status? Oh, she goes to. Didn't she go visit her dragons?
Yes, yes. She goes and sees the two dragons that we saw chained up in the. She's obviously given up hope on Drogon. He's off doing his own thing, probably wreaking havoc somewhere, God knows where. But she does go check down on the dragons, because Dario says, "What is a mother of dragons without her dragons?" Mm-hmm. And this scene, it did give me a little jump scare, just because there's sort of, being that I know that she can take the heat because she can't get burned, but these creatures.
That's a misconception, actually. We can talk about that. We can talk about that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I was talking about this with a friend, and she had wondered why she was afraid of the flame. But they weren't not just that, but they had nipped at her, and there's no way she could, if they bite into her, she's done. So, but those dragons have gotten really big, and they are pretty damn scary.
I have an image to share with the dragon size. I saw this in the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit today. I'm gonna get that ready if you want to keep talking about the
Yeah,
dragons.
sure. Yeah, sure. We see both of them, and we're introduced with the chain, and then once it pops up, the dragon, one of them, I don't know which one's which, took a nip at her, and she backed up, and she does flee from within the tomb out of fear, and you see the look on her face that she is. It's interesting because she did have control of these dragons, but now she's sort of way in over her head, just being that they've been alone in a dark cavern. But okay, seeing
Yeah,
some of the images you're pulling up here.
yeah, she lost control of the dragons essentially. But yeah, here's a size comparison. We have from egg to little baby,
Yeah,
and then what is this like
it's like a dog. It's like a big dog.
yeah, like toddler dog sized dragons, and then you got, this is getting pretty big here, and then here's the new ones. Like, obviously, like she's about the same size as Drogon here. Maybe he's a little bit bigger, but
Yeah.
here they're almost twice her height.
Yeah.
They have really grown up, and these are the smaller dragons. Um, Rhaegal and Viserion are smaller dragons than Drogon.
Now, were they always smaller dragons, or is that just because they're sort of in this captivity? Was Drogon always just a bigger dragon?
He's always been the biggest.
Okay.
But yeah, the captivity also. There's a really good quote from the books that Jorah. No, I'm sorry, that Barristan tells Daenerys, because he knows about the history when dragons used to be raised in King's Landing. They used to have a dragon, I think they called it the Dragon's Dome, or I forgot what they called it, but it was a place where they used to raise dragons. The Targaryens used to raise their dragons there. And he said that over the years, like dragons used to be raised out in the open and they would grow huge. And then he said once they were started being raised in the dragon pits, that they were very small. Like, and he makes the comment that when they're raised in containment, that they don't grow as large. So I think that's a point they're sticking with. And obviously we haven't seen Drogon yet, but these two are getting pretty big and pretty angry. So
I can only imagine how big Drogon is. And in the teaser trailer for the season, we saw a pretty massive dragon flying overhead. So that could very well have been Drogon out on his own. But you had said that it's a common misconception that Dany can withstand fire. So she's not completely immune to fire.
yeah, there's no Targaryen trait to be immune to fire.
Okay.
The way George Martin explains it is that the fire pier, where she walked into the fire pier and just spent the night in the fire and woke up, and they call her Daenerys the Unburnt, that was meant to be seen as more of like a miracle, as far as like, not that she could just go dive into a fire anytime she wants, but more or less that basically all the components of a blood magic spell were present during that fire pier. They had the 3 eggs. They had Drogo's body, Drogo's horse, and Mary Mazdur, the woman. I forgot what they called her.
Yeah, she's the one that poisoned
the Magi.
Yes.
Yeah, she was referred to as the Magi, and so it was basically 3 lives for the 3 dragons. And they don't go into specifics, but basically all the ingredients for a spell were present at that pier just by coincidence. And her going in there and coming out was more of like a miracle or kind of spell kind of thing. It's not that she's just totally immune to fire.
Okay.
So like if the dragons were to breathe on her, she would probably burn. Or she would burn. There's no probably, because there's a case in the books where they talk about one of the past Targaryens, where they're always talking about how you flip a coin with a Targaryen. With a Targaryen, they're either mad or they're sane, and so there's a history of mad Targaryens, and one of them, I think his name was like Arion Brightflame, is what they called him, because he believed if he set himself on fire that he would become a dragon. And so he set himself on fire with wildfire, and all he did was burn and die. So
all right.
So there's examples of that, but yeah, George Martin has come out multiple times and said that she's not just like purely immune to fire. She's not like a fire type Pokemon or something, you know.
Okay.
So
what's good to know? At least I know she's not some immortal. She can burn.
Yep.
But anyways, we'll move on to I guess we can go into some of the smaller stuff. We saw Marjorie bust into the room of Loras, who was with another lover yet again. I know we've talked about this in the past, and it is getting a little ridiculous that it seems like every time we're seeing him, he's in bed with another guy. Because as you were talking about, Loras is an accomplished knight. I mean, we saw this very early on in the show. He's very talented with a sword, and yet now he's just sort of a guy and making love in bed all the time.
And I feel like this is one of the huge examples of how HBO has simplified a character down to simply one trait. And it's that we've had this character Loras hanging around. You know, the same actor has been back for 5 seasons now, and he has done nothing of note since season 2 when Renly died. I feel like he has done nothing, but he might as well just wear a sign that says gay. Like, that's all he is. It seems like they're just trying to say, like, hey, look, we have gay people in our show. Like, and he doesn't do anything. Like, we don't see him fight. I feel like half the casual viewership has probably forgotten that he's a knight. You know, like, it seems like all they use him for is, like you said, just sex scenes. I mean,
and if it's not that, it's him it's him avoiding or cowering to Cersei, and in fact, we see him later on at the kind of the funeral.
Tywin's funeral.
Yeah, that he tries to give her words of consolation, but she obviously they're not very meaningful, or they're not coming from the heart, and she obviously doesn't want to hear them. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing him just sort of as a
yeah. He stumbles his words, and he comes off as kind of like incoherent.
Yeah,
and ingenuine, and I think he maneuvers the court better than that. And yeah, again, they make it a point to where he doesn't even care if people knows he's gay in the show. It's like in the books, it's kind of a well-kept secret. Well, not a well-kept secret, I wouldn't say that, but only people of the inner court really know that he's kind of gay. And it's not like wide known fact that Loras is gay. Like, you can't just go out to a commoner and say, "Hey, what do you think of the Knight of Flowers?" They're like, "Yeah, he's gay." Like, it's not like that at all. Like, it's not common knowledge. But in the show, they make it seem like it's common knowledge.
Yeah, like it's the worst kept secret in King's Landing or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I just really think it's a sloppy handling of his character. There's so much more to this guy. In some ways, he's one of the most like caring characters in the books. Like, he holds, like, once Renly dies, he basically swears to be celibate. He's like, you know, my favorite quote, and a lot of the fans' favorite quotes, is, "When the sun has set, no candle can replace it." So it pretty much means, you know, Renly was his life. That was his sun. And now that that's gone, nobody can replace that. And he doesn't even try to hook up with guys. There's no infinite sex scenes of him just hooking up with random dudes. He just gives up. And in fact, I'm going to say it now because it's been a few seasons and it should have happened a while ago, but he becomes the Knight of the Kingsguard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it would have happened like after maybe like season 3 is when it would have happened. And now we're on season 5 and he's still just hanging around banging dudes. So
interesting.
I don't think they're going to make him a Knight of the Kingsguard because he's obviously not staying celibate in the show. He's basically betting another guy every episode. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of his honor and his knightly behavior, I feel like, are lost in the show.
The next thing, next small one is we see Brienne and Pod. They've sort of Brienne's defeated. She says that all she ever wanted to do was serve a good lord, but she said all the good ones are dead and all that's left are, you know,
monsters.
Are monsters. Yeah, she said monsters. There we go. And you feel for Brienne, but there's not a whole lot more to this scene than what we kind of already saw at the end of last season. She again tries to send tries to send Pod off. He saying that she's not a knight, and he's not her squire. But Pod is still by her side, at least in that moment. And as that's happening, we see Sansa and Littlefinger leaving the Vale. We do get a little bit of them earlier in the Vale, watching Lord Aaron little Lord Aaron trying to fight, learn how to fight, but he not doing too well, being that he was at his mother's teat up until her death last season. So they leave the Vale, and now they're heading. We're told they're heading west. It's my understanding this is as far as Sansa's character's really gotten in the books. Am I right on this, or?
Yeah, there's a little bit more details to the politics of the Eyrie, and I'll say this: the show is departing from any of that book content going forward. It seems like they're leaving the Eyrie subplot kind of to the side, and they're taking her in a new direction. She does not leave the Eyrie in the books, or at least at this point. So the show is taking her and Littlefinger in a completely different direction. They're off. We know they're departing west, but we haven't been told where yet. And they pass right by Brienne, so she comes within arm's reach of both the Stark girls, which doesn't happen in the books. But it's very unlucky of her.
Yeah, no kidding. And then I forgot while we did touch on the funeral. There is a character we're reintroduced to, and that's Lancel Lannister. Now he looks completely different now, because last time we saw him he had long blonde hair, and the last time we saw him was at the Battle of Blackwater. I'm assuming.
I think that's the last time we've seen him. I might be wrong, but Lancel Lannister is back, and I almost thought he was a recast because he looks so different. He's got a different hairstyle. He's wearing obviously really different clothes, different hair color, and he looks like he's buffed up since we've seen him. So I thought it was a different guy for a little bit, but no, we confirmed it's the same actor. He's back. So he's joined the Sparrows, and that's basically like a grassroots kind of religious movement. I can give you a little bit of background detail on them from the books. So the way the Sparrows form is, so I always like to bring this up because the Riverlands are one of my favorite destinations in the books. It's the place that's where the War of the Five Kings basically took place, was the Riverlands. That's where all five kings basically just came and did battle over this huge area, and they just destroyed it. The Riverlands are left in ruin. They're burned, ransacked. The people are killed and raped and destroyed. I mean, there was no holds barred in the Riverlands. Everybody was just destroyed out there. And so the Sparrows comes as like a grassroots movement from that. Is basically when the Riverlands were in turmoil, the king didn't send out forces to come out and kick out all the usurpers. He let them basically fend for themselves, and so a lot of the small folk, even though River Run and the Tullys sided with the Starks, the small folk were left to whatever. There was no hope for these people. They were just ransacked and destroyed. And so the Sparrows are basically the small folk coming up and saying, "Hey, we need the guidance of the Seven." There used to be an order of religious knights called I believe it's called I can't remember now. The Star, something about the Star of the Seven. And it no longer exists, but the Sparrows are walking around with clubs and farm weapons like hoes and pitchforks. They're basically just the small folk arming themselves in the name of the Seven, and they want to bring back the care for the small folk of the Riverlands, and so they've come to King's Landing to seek safety and to get recognition that they were left to fend for themselves when this war happened. And Lancel he's really absorbed this message, and he's become a religious person, and he's siding with the Sparrows.
I'm assuming we'll get a little bit more about them going forward, being that they do get an interesting introduction. So I'm assuming the High Sparrow, or the High Sparrow is a character I've heard about. So I'm assuming we're going to get a little bit more about that character and the Sparrows going forward in this season.
Definitely, definitely. And so let's see. Is there anything we have not touched on yet? We can talk about the wall now, right? I think
Yeah, we'll close out with the wall. This is we get to see John again. He's at the wall, and as it ended last season, Stannis had come in and saved the wall from the wildlings, and so now Stannis is firmly in charge at the wall. He's basically the king at the wall. I don't really know what he's the king of so far, but he is the king as he's claimed to since we first met him. But we get an interesting development. John is called up to the top of the wall to meet with Stannis. And while up there, Stannis tells him that he wants Mance Rayder to take the knee. And this was a shock to me as the reason why, and it's that he wanted the wildlings to join his forces in order to take on the Boltons.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I kind of like about Stannis, and I'll talk about it again, is that he's a man of prudence, and he knows he has a smaller army than the Lannisters. He can't contend with the numbers of the Lannisters or the numbers of the of Highgarden, and he needs to bolster his army. I think he's only several thousand strong at this point, and so he sees an opportunity here that these wildlings want to be south of the wall, and he wants to give them the opportunity to earn that right. And so that's basically what he's saying is, hey, come join my cause, and I'll make sure that you're rewarded with land and you could become citizens of the Seven Kingdoms. So to me, that's kind of I think that's his prudence. I think it's a very prudent decision and a lot of these wildlings are great fighters. It's just trying to get them to fall in line to be under rulership because they are a free people and they do not want to be ruled.
And Mance Rayder really is the only man who's successfully done that, so it makes sense that Stannis would want him to be recruited as an underling of him, because if Mance can control them, then Stannis can control them.
Yep. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic here. And then, Jon is tasked with bringing Mance to to Stannis's plan, and he only has till sundown to do it. And he has this conversation with Mance, and it's a great conversation.
This scene was amazing, and Mance, since we first met him, has been a character I've really liked. I do like the actor Tyrion Hines. I think he's great in the stuff I've seen him in, and so he's just kind of has this presence. And so this was a great, probably one of the better conversations. Though it's not very extremely long, it was one of the better conversations I felt Jon Snow had, because as you have said in the past, Jon has not been, I think really up until the end of last season, had not been a very strong character. He left something on the table. But at the end of last season with the battle at the wall and stuff like that, he kind of grew. But this scene definitely sort of fortified Jon as one of the stronger characters of the series. And Mance is such a man of he left the Night's Watch, but he is a man who operates under a good code. He's an honorable man, and when Jon gives him the opportunity to surrender and bend to the knee, he says, "No, I'm not going to do that." The respect of the Northerners was more important to him than his own life.
Yep, and he says a quote that really resonated with me. I think it's my favorite quote of the episode. Is that he says, "All I ever wanted was the opportunity to make my own mistakes."
Yes.
And I love that line because it's really true to his character. He's a free man. That's what he wants. There's a story that he tells Jon about why he betrayed or why he deflected from the wall. And obviously he used to have a black cloak. I don't know if I ever told you this. He used to have a black cloak, and he was stabbed by a bear or something, or a wildcat.
Okay.
And so some wildling woman north of the wall, she nursed him to health. And she stitched some, I think it was red silk or red satin or something to repair the cloak. So he wore like a red and black cloak, and that really just changed his mindset. He's like, I want to wear this cloak. I don't want to wear black anymore. I want to be a free man. And he just decided to deflect. It's like it opened his mind to being free. Just the fact that he could wear a different color, that was a big deal to him. He wanted the freedom, and He's such a really interesting character, and like you said, Cillian Hines. I believe we didn't get enough of him. Like there should have been more, but I'm glad he got a great send off in this episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, so John's not able to talk him into kneeling, and he's taken out. And I like his words to Stannis too. Stannis is like, "Kneel to me, and I'll spare you." And he goes, "I wish you." What does he say? "I wish you good luck in the wars to come," or something.
Yes, he does. And it wasn't a smart ass move response or anything like that. It was borderline genuine, because the look on Stannis's face was like, not Stannis kind of had this look on his face like, I appreciate the kind words. I'm not going to spare your life, obviously, but
yeah,
off you go. And Mance did. Obviously, he didn't want to die in the way that they were going to execute him, because he'd asked if he was going to get beheaded or hung, and he said, being burned was a bad way to go. And this scene was sad watching a character be burned to death, especially a character we've sort of grown an attachment to. And I had a feeling when John left, I had this feeling that he was going to fire an arrow. I just knew that there was going to be something that put Mance out of his misery, and sure enough, we get that. And I think that was one of the single most important, it may have been the most important moment of John's character probably since the beginning of probably since the first season. And I think it showed that, John didn't fear any sort of repercussions for this. He respected Mance, and he felt that Mance should have a better death than just being burnt alive.
Yep. It's a really important point. Like he really respected Mance, and he has a respect for the wildlings, and I don't know, that's just a really penultimate like moment there for him to do that. And yeah, there's a good way to end the episode. I think it was overall. I mean, I felt like the first episode, maybe the first 2 episodes of each season, usually seem like it's just catch up, or kind of like, hey, we're setting the stage. So I didn't really have high expectations for the first episode, but I felt like it was pretty decent.
Yeah, I felt it was good too. As far as I mean, you always worry that they, especially as the show gets more popular, that they might do more of an introduction than they need to. But the show kept on rolling. We got little introductions just to kind of show everybody's at, but the show got rolling, and we are definitely on the build toward the end, toward the ultimate finale of the show. Season 4 was all the payoff for the first 3, and this begins a new build, and I'm already excited on this journey that we're going to.
Oh yeah. So I guess lastly, let's go ahead and hear some of your predictions. I want to know what you think's going to happen.
Okay. I did watch the after the episode, there was the inside the episode with the showrunners Benioff and Weiss, and they talked about the opening scene with Cersei as a child, the flashback. And I said this is gonna be a big season for Cersei. To me, that could mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it could be this could be the death of Cersei by the end of this season. I feel like her story arc, though there could be more, I feel like maybe its natural arc has sort of come to an end. Being that Joffrey's dead, her dad is dead. I don't really know where it's going. Obviously, the love for her kids is what kind of keeps her going. We're reminded of this over and over and over again. Cersei is kind of a vicious woman. At the end of the day, she loves her children. And that's for multiple reasons. One, obviously, being that it's the one symbol of her and Jaime's relationship that she can actually have out in the open without people really knowing it. But that's kind of that is sort of the product of her relationship with Jaime. But I feel like this could be the end of her. Either that, or I got this bad feeling for Littlefinger as well. So those are kind of my predictions. I like to predict deaths, I guess, just because the show's kind of conditioned me to do so. But that's what I predict so far. So next week it could be something different, but that's what I'm predicting for this first episode.
Fair enough. I'm gonna stay out of it still. Like I feel like maybe next season I can start making predictions, because assuming the book doesn't come out by next season, which is a very sad thought, but we'll see. And man, who knows? Maybe this season we'll pass up a lot of the book stuff, and I can start making predictions. But yeah. We'll see how that turns out, and we'll go ahead and close out. If you guys want to check us out, follow us at Altness on Twitter. We have an Instagram at Altness. Facebook, Altness, everything Altness. So yeah, check us out there. We'll be doing an episode for each Game of Thrones that airs. And so, yep, tune in next week. We'll be here to talk about episode 2 of season 5. And yeah, we'll have a good one. And this is Brian and Jordan signing out.